The Missing Sister. Noise from 2024 revolves around Ju Young, a hearing-impaired woman who moves into a new apartment with her sister Ju Hee, trying to start over. Everything seems normal until Ju Hee suddenly disappears inside the building itself, leaving no trace behind, not even on security cameras. From that point on, the movie turns into a desperate search. Ju Young rushes back to the apartment and starts investigating the disappearance with the help of her sister's boyfriend. But there's a problem: a constant strange noise. Almost impossible to ignore, starts echoing through the walls. It's not a normal sound. It feels alive, like it's trying to get attention. And here's the detail that makes everything more unsettling. Since Ju Young relies on a hearing aid, the sound becomes a weapon against her.
들려?
At times, she doesn't even know if she's actually hearing something or if she's being manipulated. On top of that, the movie has some bizarre moments. As she investigates, the neighbors act strangely. Some ignore everything, others become aggressive, and there's even a guy downstairs who starts threatening everyone, convinced the noise is coming from them. The most interesting part is this: the more she tries to find her sister, the louder the sound gets, as if it's guiding her straight toward a truth she won't want to discover. The Bizarre Case. In the 2024 series Strange Harvest, we follow two detectives, Joe Kirby and Lexi Taylor, investigating a series of murders in Southern California. The killer is known as Mr. Shiny, a serial murderer who leaves ritualistic markings at crime scenes. At first, everything seems to follow that classic police investigation structure, but something feels off from the beginning. The crime scenes don't make sense within normal logic. Bodies appear in strange positions, symbols don't match anything known, and some pieces of evidence seem outright impossible. Even so, the case is treated like just another serial killer investigation, at least at first. What makes Strange Harvest stand out is its format. The movie is built entirely as a mockumentary, with interviews, recordings, archival footage, and security cameras. That gives it a much stronger sense of realism, almost like you're watching a real case being slowly unraveled. As the investigation progresses, the tone shifts. What seemed like a criminal begins to connect to something much bigger, almost incomprehensible. The idea of cycles, events repeating over time, starts to emerge, pulling the story toward a more cosmic horror direction. Before you realize it, you're no longer watching an investigation. You're trying to understand something even the characters can't explain. The Chain. In Caveat, we follow Isaac, a man with partial memory loss who accepts a very strange job. He's hired to take care of Olga, a woman living in isolation in a crumbling house on an island. That alone is already unsettling, but then comes the condition. He must wear a chain attached to his body at all times, limiting him to certain areas of the house. Yes, he agrees to it. The official reason is that Olga has unpredictable behavior, but in reality, it just makes it feel like Isaac has walked into a trap. The house is too quiet, filled with dark rooms and narrow passageways. And there's one detail the movie uses extremely well: a toy rabbit with a drum, which appears at deeply uncomfortable moments. The dynamic between Isaac and Olga is never stable. Her mood shifts quickly, she disappears out of nowhere, shows up in unexpected places. And since he's chained, every movement becomes a calculation. Little by little, the film reveals there's more behind that job. There's an unresolved story tied to that house, involving her family. And Isaac clearly didn't know everything he should have before accepting. This was director Damian McCarthy's first feature film, and even with a low budget, it stood out for its creativity in building tension with minimal elements. The Infection. In The Sadness, we follow Jim and Kat, a couple living a normal life while news spreads about a strange virus. At first, it feels like just another distant problem, until suddenly, people begin to change. This isn't a typical disease. The infected don't turn into classic zombies. They remain conscious, but lose all moral restraint, and that's what makes it so disturbing. People start acting purely on impulse, with no limits at all. Simple situations instantly become dangerous. A stranger on the street, someone on the subway, anyone can become a real threat within seconds. The movie follows Jim trying to cross the city to reunite with Kat, while she faces the same chaos somewhere else. The pacing is intense. There's barely any room to breathe. Every environment becomes a tension-filled scenario. And unlike other films in the genre, the fear doesn't come just from physical attacks. It comes from unpredictability. You never know how far an infected person will go. The Body. In The Corpse of Anna Fritz, the discomfort starts immediately. Anna Fritz, a famous actress, dies suddenly and her body is taken to a morgue. Everything there feels cold, mechanical, routine. But the movie quickly breaks that normality when Pao, one of the workers, takes a picture of the body and sends it to two friends, just for the shock value. The friends show up at the morgue late at night. At first, it seems like curiosity, but the tone is already disturbing from the start. They treat the situation completely wrong, as if it carries no weight at all. And the movie forces you to sit through every bad decision they make. The turning point comes when Anna, who everyone believed was dead, shows signs of being alive, and from that moment on, there's no going back. What was already disturbing turns into total desperation. The three panic, not knowing how to react, because now it's not just about dealing with someone who woke up. It's about what they already did before that. Anna is weak, confused, trying to understand where she is and what happened, while they begin making increasingly extreme decisions to avoid consequences. Directed by Hector Hernandez-Vicens, the film became known for dividing audiences, mainly because it crosses moral boundaries that very few horror films dare to explore. The horns. At the beginning of Antlers, we meet Julia, a teacher who returns to her hometown and starts noticing that one of her students, Lucas, is behaving strangely. He's quiet, isolated, and clearly living in fear. Meanwhile, his younger brother also shows signs of neglect. It quickly becomes clear that something is very wrong in their home. The film slowly reveals that the boy's father encountered a mysterious presence in the forest, something tied to a creature from indigenous folklore known as the Wendigo. But this isn't a simple transformation. It's a slow deterioration where behavior changes before appearance. Lucas tries to deal with it on his own. He hides what's happening inside the house, trying to protect his younger brother while things spiral completely out of control. And that makes everything heavier, because the movie blends supernatural horror with abandonment and childhood trauma. Julia starts investigating, connecting the boy's behavior to old stories from the region. And the film opens up the idea that the Wendigo isn't just a physical monster, it's something tied to hunger, loss of control, and the destruction of those consumed by it. Antlers works much more through atmosphere than direct action. It builds tension through silence, setting, and that constant feeling that something terrible has already happened and is only getting worse. The film was produced by Guillermo del Toro, and you can feel his influence in how the creature is portrayed, not just as a threat, but as part of a larger mythology. In the end, the monster does appear, but what really hits is everything that comes before it. The crooked house. The story of Incident in a Ghostland begins with Pauline, a mother who moves into an isolated house with her two daughters, Beth and Vera. The idea is to start over in a quiet place they inherited from family. But on the very first night, two intruders show up, and this isn't a quick break-in. It's a prolonged nightmare. The three are forced to fight for survival inside their own home. After that event, the movie jumps forward in time. Beth grows up and becomes a horror writer, clearly shaped by what she went through. She builds a life far away, while Vera remains in the house with their mother, trapped in that trauma. When Beth returns to visit, things start getting strange again. The house feels alive. Reality begins to break down, and you realize maybe not everything happened exactly the way it was shown. The movie plays heavily with perception. What is memory? What is denial?
Try to accept reality! Come back!
And what is psychological survival. Several times you think you understand what's happening, but the narrative pulls the rug out from under you. And it works because the character's trauma is at the center of everything. This isn't an easy film to watch. It's uncomfortable, heavy, and doesn't try to soften anything. During filming, actress Taylor Hickson suffered a real accident during a scene and was left with a permanent scar. That gives you an idea of how physically intense the production was. The mysterious meteor. In Color Out of Space, the horror comes from space, and it doesn't care about being understood. In the film, the Gardner family moves to an isolated farm, trying to live a quieter life. There's Nathan, the slightly eccentric father, the mother Teresa, and their children, each dealing with their own issues. Everything feels strange but still under control until a meteor crashes right into their yard. At first, it just seems like a curious event, but the object starts emitting a color that's impossible to define. It's not purple, not pink, it's nothing that makes sense. And that's when the movie really shifts into uncomfortable territory. The water changes, plants grow in bizarre ways, and animals begin acting strangely. It doesn't take long before the family starts changing too. The film shows this deterioration slowly. It's not the kind of horror that explodes all at once. It spreads, creeps in gradually until no one is in control anymore. A standout here is Nicolas Cage, who delivers a completely unhinged performance. He starts as a slightly odd father and escalates into a level of chaos that only he can pull off without feeling forced. Some moments are almost absurd, but they work within the film's tone. The less you understand that color, the more uncomfortable it becomes. And by the time you realize the damage it causes, there's no going back. A different kind of werewolf. In Big Bad Wolf, everything starts with a group of teenagers heading to a remote cabin in the woods. Classic horror setup. Party, drinks, until something invades the place. A werewolf appears and the attack changes everything. This isn't a silent creature. It talks, taunts its victims, and seems to enjoy what it's doing.
Marking your territory again.
Breaking away from the idea of a more traditional monster. The focus then shifts to Derek, one of the survivors, who is deeply affected by what happened, but no one fully believes his story. To most people, it was just a normal attack or something unexplained. Meanwhile, the wolf is still out there, attacking others and leaving a trail of chaos. The movie follows this mix of investigation and survival. Derek tries to prove the creature is real while also figuring out how to stop it. What makes it different is the werewolf's behavior. It doesn't act purely on instinct. It thinks, chooses targets, and plays with its victims, making everything more unpredictable. Big Bad Wolf isn't subtle horror. It goes straight to the point, sometimes with an almost exaggerated tone. The film plays a lot with the big bad wolf idea from fairy tales, but in a completely twisted, violent way. The tapes. In the 2001 film Session 9, the story follows Gordon and his crew, a group of workers hired to clean up an abandoned psychiatric hospital. The place is massive, empty, and already feels heavy just by existing. They need to finish the job quickly, so they end up staying there for days. Each member of the group reacts differently to the environment. Some get irritated, others become quieter. Small tensions begin to rise, especially involving Gordon, who arrives already dealing with personal issues. The movie doesn't spell it out, but it slowly makes it clear that no one there is really okay. The central element appears when Mike, one of the workers, finds old tapes of psychiatric sessions recorded at the hospital. He starts listening to them alone, and that's when the atmosphere shifts completely. The sessions follow a patient with multiple personalities, and as the tapes progress, things become more and more disturbing. What's most interesting is how the film blends this with the mental state of the characters themselves. You're never sure what comes from the place, the hospital's past, or their own minds. Everything works precisely because it's subtle. It's the kind of movie that slowly gets into your head, and before you realize it, you're already uncomfortable without knowing exactly why. The obsession. In Excision, we meet Pauline, a completely out-of-place teenager. She's strange, socially awkward, and has a growing obsession with medicine, especially surgery. While other people her age worry about school and social life, Pauline spends her time fantasizing about medical procedures in a deeply disturbing way. Her relationship with her family only makes things worse. Her mother tries to control every aspect of her life, creating a suffocating environment, while her younger sister suffers from a serious lung condition. That detail becomes the focus of Pauline's mind. She starts believing she can fix her sister in her own way. The film shifts between reality and Pauline's fantasies, and those fantasies are exaggerated, almost surreal, showing how she sees the world. But the most intense part is how that line becomes increasingly blurred. At a certain point, you realize she can no longer separate imagination from what she can actually do. Pauline tries to connect with people, but everything goes wrong. Her interactions are awkward and uncomfortable, reinforcing her isolation. That only fuels her obsession even more, as if it's the only place where she feels in control. Here, the discomfort is psychological more than anything else. Pauline carries the entire film, and you're stuck trying to understand just how far this will go. In the end, the most terrifying part isn't what Pauline imagines, it's when she decides to act. The discomfort. In All My Friends Hate Me, Pete travels to spend the weekend with college friends at an isolated countryside house. The plan is simple, celebrate his birthday, but from the moment he arrives, something feels off. His friends seem different, cold, distant, small details start to bother him. Jokes that don't land, strange looks, conversations that stop when he approaches. Nothing is direct, but everything feels intentional, and the movie puts you inside Pete's head, making you question alongside him, is this just paranoia or is something actually wrong? Things get worse when a stranger joins the group, an eccentric, intrusive guy that no one properly explains. He starts participating in everything like he belongs there, while Pete clearly doesn't trust him, but somehow everyone else seems completely fine with it. The film builds on this social discomfort. It's all about tension, awkwardness, and doubt. Pete starts losing control of the situation, unsure if he's being manipulated or just overreacting. This is the kind of movie that makes you uncomfortable in a different way. Anyone who's ever felt out of place in a group will feel it here more than in any traditional horror scene. It creates an experience many people describe as pure anxiety in movie form. And if you enjoyed this video, there's another one on your screen right now. See you in the next one.